Well, the nice computer lady says that we're live streaming, so I'm gonna take her word for it. And there we go. We are live streaming. Happy days. Welcome everybody to the United States Pirate Party annual meeting. My name is Drew Bingaman. I am the United States Pirate Party captain, at least for the day. So, got a couple of notes for everybody. We're using Jitsi for this live stream, so we will need to take a minute or so break in between because we do have a limitation of how long we can stream. It's about an hour. It's about every hour we need to do that. So I will try to do that at times that causes a little disturbance as possible. Also, if everybody could hold their comments until after our speakers are done, that'd be great. Then just use the raise hand button, and I will recognize you and give you the floor. And yeah, just keep yourself muted so that we can keep our audio as decent as possible. What's that, Ty?
May I say something a little extra?
Sure.
If there's anything that you don't want to say publicly, just private message Drew or private message anyone who's active and do that. But Drew, I just want everybody to be comfortable here. So yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. So to open today's conference, I'm going to kick it over to Darren, who is at our host site in San Francisco, and you've got the floor, Darren.
Hello, my name is Darren McKeeman. I am the quartermaster of the United States Pirate Party and the California Pirate Party. This venue is courtesy of the California Pirate Party. It is an infamous spot in San Francisco history and the world history of drag queens. This is the former headquarters of Finocchio's. It was a nightclub where drag shows got started in the 1930s. And it was from 1936 until 1999 that it operated here, and the art of drag originated in this building. So that is one of the benefits of being in San Francisco. Just about every single building has some sort of historic connotation, and I'm glad that we could secure this venue for our meeting today. We're still expecting a few of the other. We're still expecting a few of the other Pirate Party folks to arrive here, and I may have to step away to let them in the door. But in the meantime, we are proud to have as our keynote speaker today, Brigitte Jonsdottir. Brigitte is the founder of the Icelandic Pirate Party and a former member of the Icelandic Parliament. She is a poet. She is an anarchist, very near and dear to my heart. And she is a personal hero of mine, so I'm going to let Brigitte take it away here. Thank you for joining us today from Iceland, Brigitte.
Well, thank you very much for asking me, and I'm just gonna do a little bit of a historical overview how I sort of accidentally got into Parliament and what worked both for my first party and the Pirate Party, and then I'll talk a little bit about strategy, and then if you like, we can have maybe 10 minutes Q&A. If you have any questions that arise, I'm always very happy to share my experience. So I really never had any aspirations to be a politician or a parliamentarian, and that's why I call myself a poetician. And I'm very happy to tell you that one of my heroes, Audrey Tang, who was the Minister for Technology in Taiwan, she's the only other one that has taken up that title, a poetician. So there are, there are many sort of pirates in hiding, people that are aware of, or not in hiding, but that, have managed to get into prominence and to have influence on, in particularly, policy in regard to democracy in the digital era, which I think is and was the speciality of the Pirate Party, and one of the reasons I founded it in Iceland, because I felt that a lot of people are just totally illiterate when it comes to technology and the impact of technology on our day-to-day lives. And if anything, that actually chipping away our basic human rights in the offline space much faster than I could ever anticipate it. But I originally sort of accidentally got into Parliament in Iceland in the wake of the financial crisis in 2008. So one of the things I love to do is to organize, and I was organizing a lot of protests and events and so forth in the sort of like in the shock era after the financial crisis or during it. For those that don't know, Iceland had, I think, the 5th worst financial crisis in the history of humankind. And because even if many people think that it's good to privatize everything, that has never been the case, at least for us. The banks were privatized and we went bankrupt. And we had to sort of like socialize a lot of the debt that the people that were basically carving out the banks and then running away with it in literal suitcases when everything fell down and crashed. But there was this, during one of the big meetings we had, many of the groups that were organizing, it was like all kinds of people organizing and doing all kinds of civic meetings and protests and stuff like that. And so we decided, one of the groups, to invite all the other groups for a big home meeting. And our aim was to try to understand what that, unified us, because it was very different people. And we asked people to come to the meeting with the 3 most important things they felt we could do in order to change Iceland so we would never have that type of crisis again. And I think maybe 15 different groups came that day, and it was really amazing. And unfortunately, the thing that everyone agreed on, except my friends, the anarchists, was that we needed to run and get into Parliament and try to change things from inside. And so I helped organize the groups so that we could create like a grassroots coalition to run for Parliament. And we had no money. And I think I was the only person kind of knew a little bit about how to run a campaign. We had 8 weeks before elections. And I knew that we had to run in all constituencies to get free media coverage on the state broadcaster, that's sort of like your NPR. And astonishingly, and also, we had a very creative campaign. One of the things that we did was to go to the biggest flea market, rent a booth, and introduce, get people to give a signature there and just talk to ordinary people because we didn't have like a massive amount of manpower. And astonishingly, we got like 7.8% of the vote. And since like before the elections, I wasn't really going to run. I was just sort of organizing and trying to get people engaged, but I couldn't get enough women to run. So I couldn't stand for a political movement that only had like one woman running, out of 6 people, in leadership positions. So I ran, and I woke up one morning and I was in Parliament. It was extremely informative, and I learned so much. I was the only geek in Parliament. I come from the background of web development. I started to make web pages back in '95, and I did some live broadcasts in '96 when it wasn't supposed to be possible. So I was doing, I had this sort of fantasy like John Perry Barlow about the internet, that it was like a whole new world, and we could sort of like just do anything and connect with anyone. It was completely decentralized, and unfortunately he was wrong and I was wrong, so mea culpa. It has its pros and cons, but the cons are just so great right now. Anyway, just like I don't know, half a year after I got into Parliament, there was a group of people that came to visit Iceland, kind of folk heroes, because they had leaked. They were a platform from a leak from one of the big banks that collapsed, and that was a totally unknown organization to the world called WikiLeaks. And they were giving a presentation that John Perry Barlow had originally given, but they had sort of like made it more timely, about making Iceland into a digital safe haven for all the forbidden knowledge in the world. So that, if you, for example, were a publication or grassroots movement or journalist or whistleblower, you could host your data in Iceland and it would never be taken down. So in some sense, it was legalizing what WikiLeaks was doing. And we did, I was listening to this presentation. I approached them and I said, let's do this. And so we did. And we crowdsourced support for looking at all the best sort of like policy we could find all over the world on legislation in regard to whistleblowing and Freedom of Information Act, and limiting prior restraint and protection of historical records and all that kind of stuff, and source protection, of course. And for some reason, I don't know how I did it to this day. I was the smallest party in the Parliament. I convinced the entire Parliament to support a parliamentary resolution I put forward. I approached different people in regard to get their support for it. And I also approached people that I knew would be in power after this particular 4 years that I would be in Parliament. And I got a unanimous vote for this resolution that entitled 13 different law changes or new laws in 4 different ministries. And it's the first time actually in our history that a parliamentarian has done anything like this. I'm still amazed that it actually happened. So we have beautiful whistleblowing act that protects both public and private whistleblowers from the public and private sector. We have a really nice source protection law. We have just everything except data retention. I have not been able to get that going. So even if I wasn't in Parliament, I managed to get Prime Minister to carry on working on it. So I'm just telling you this just to show you that there are endless possibilities if you apply creative thinking with governance. That's why you should really try to attract artists and creative people, because no website, for example, would look nice if you wouldn't have a creative person making the front of it, and then a creative person wouldn't have a functional web page if they didn't have somebody that's good at coding. Anyway, so because I felt this resolution was so important to carry on working on it, and because of my political movement that we got into Parliament, there was a provision in it that because we didn't want to be just, get a forever seat in Parliament and not being able to get any of our stuff done. Our aim was sort of a hit and run movement, and our main aims was, to get a new constitution, crowdsourced, and transparency and accountability and stuff like that. We had a very sort of limited agenda and policy that we ran on, and one of the agendas was that we had to dissolve after one term if we had not accomplished our goals, and we had not, so we had to dissolve. And during that time, I decided, I had seen what the European pirates had been doing and what the German pirates had been trying to do in regard to liquid democracy. And so I felt it would be kind of good to get involved with sort of like an international coalition of like-minded people. And so I decided so what we called this resolution, we called it the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative, and I had like a foundation to try to make sure that we would get it done. So at one of our board meetings, I suggested we would create a pirate party in Iceland, and our main aim would be to finish the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative. Also, we're looking into copyright, of course, and stuff like that. And our main aim was IMI, and then, I think we also had, what else did we have? Yeah, decriminalization on drug use and stuff like that. It was very simple. And to my astonishment, we got elected. So I was having my second term in Parliament. But during our time in Parliament, it was kind of weird. We became extremely popular. And I think one of the reasons we were polling for a full year as the biggest party in Iceland. We were like, it was really weird, and it was making everyone extremely nervous. But I think the main reason, I've been trying to figure out why we were three persons, and we had to cover a lot of stuff. And there were just relentless attacks on us from mainstream media, in particular the conservatives. And we just, instead of like going into defensive mode, I just mocked the guy that was the editor he couldn't answer my mockery. So every time he attacked, I just said, I wrote like a Facebook post or something. Thank you so much. You're so kind. This defamation you did on us just helped us go up in the polls by 5%, and now we're polling the biggest. We're polling bigger than your party. You're so kind. So I think by not taking ourselves too seriously, by having fun, even if it's extremely boring job, by never accepting to be bought, if any sort of interest groups, like the biggest interest group in Iceland is the fishery, sort of like the people that have stolen the fish from their fellow countrymen. They tried to have a meeting with us to buy us, and we basically said, yeah, you can come to our office, which was very tiny in the Parliament. You can come to our office if you agree to have us record the meeting. So they want to invite us to their headquarters, and give us, something nice to eat or whatever. And it was just the funniest thing because there was this tiny sofa in the office. And they had to sort of like squash together there and look really nervous. And so, yeah, if I had advice, if anyone wants to donate to get influence, mess with them. It's the best way. Like, I think the most important thing about grassroots movements, even if I'm kind of privileged because I had like both my movements got into parliament. And so we immediately got some funding from the state and so forth to run our grassroots. But it's the biggest curse to any political movement. If you want to, it's good to have a little bit of money, but crowdfunding money from ordinary people that feel motivated to be part of a movement is much more valuable. And to get people involved that are really engaged, that have a passion, that are not looking for a new church, but are looking for a way to be engaged, you know what I mean? And I think the reason why we were popular was that we ran on a platform of giving people a voice. So we created this internal system, like voting system. So in order to get an issue into the voting system for us, the parliamentarians, to take into the parliament, the only you didn't even have to be a pirate. The only thing that you required to do was to, call a meeting in the physical world, and a very low number of people needed to show up to vote it into the system. Then we would have a debate about it in the online system, and then we would vote it. And we actually took at least one brand new policy from that and ran it into the parliament, and it actually became a policy on Iceland joining the European Space Agency or something like that. And by doing this, a lot of more people came and got engaged than if we would have had like a completely closed door and only discussed among ourselves policies and stuff like that. It's also very important to understand that policies, if you want to run on something, have it very simple. Don't spend too much time trying to take policies about everything. Just rather, go and ask people. If you're going to be running your area, I would really, because there are so many offices to run for in the United States, and you have such massive crisis. I would really focus on my local environment, and just start talking, make events, show movies. One of the things I used to do is I would rent a tiny movie house, or not a movie house, the smallest one in the movie sort of complex, and invite people to come and watch the documentary, and then have a discussion after it. You can do all kinds of creative stuff to get people engaged, and you don't have to even rent a theater. Everyone has. There is so much technology today that you can do things, very cheaply, and then you can offer people to donate if they want. But I would invite them for free. They didn't have to pay anything, but if they wanted to donate, they could. Another thing that I felt really also helped us was to run, we would have panels where we would invite, some, prominent people and people from our grassroots, depending on what was happening. There was the big debate about where a new hospital, a national hospital, should be situated. So we had a big civic meeting where we got, the head of the hospital and then somebody prominent that was critical about the position or whatever. So you could form an informed decision based on the facts that you could get from experts. And one of our main mottos also was, and we were very open about that, was if somebody provides me with information that shows that I was wrong, it's okay for me to change my mind. And it was a party policy that, if you get new data or new information that will shift the policy, or you have new circumstances, married to an ideology. And I think that's extremely important. I think also what sort of made people want to be part of the movement was this sort of like, we tried to make sure that everyone would sort of like delegate roles. For example, both my movements, like both the first political movement that I helped co-create and the Pirate Party, we had a flat structure. It's extremely problematic because it's okay if you are just in grassroots, right? But if you have flat structure inside systems that are not built around flat structure, people automatically assign leadership roles. And it doesn't matter how much you delegate, you will be cursed with a role that you never asked for, because people assign these roles to you, and then they resent it as well. So it's like a horrible situation to be in. I don't know how many times, I even had to, like, when we're riding really high, like I remember in the elections, when we got 10 parliamentarians, second biggest party in Iceland, the entire mainstream media and the entire internet was in Iceland because they loved the headline, pirates are taking over Iceland and stuff like that. So, and I was in this awkward position where, I had to, the international media had designated me as the leader. I had never designated myself as the leader, but because I was known for my adventures with WikiLeaks and so forth, and various other stuff. So so I would have a flexible hierarchy, because you can have like a hierarchy where there are strict roles, as long as people never take the roles seriously. Because if you start to take your leadership role too seriously, you just become like everyone else. It's quite easy to just get assimilated into all the bullshit that we are trying to transform. So my advice would be just to have as much flat structure as possible, but you always have to designate leadership to any given project that anybody is trying to do. So it's clear, I take leadership, like, or not I, that person is being given leadership. So, it's clear, who is, like, for example, organizing this meeting or organizing, running, or whatever. There needs to be very clear roles so that other roles can be delegated as well, so not only one person is given the burden of having to do everything. But we were very good at delegating and giving people different roles, and we were extremely popular in Finland. But my dear friends in the party, they got a little bit too full of themselves and threw out all the activists, and including, and wanted to show they could do it without me, which I would have been fine with. And then they completely ruined the party, and now we have no pirates in the parliament, which is very fucked up and very sad. I put a lot of work into this project, but but what can be learned from that is that you never take yourself or the individuals too seriously. You have to be very focused on the policies that drive you out of bed in the morning. Like, the only thing to get a movement organized and powerful is to understand timing have a very clear message. For example, I don't think the Pirate Party should be so much focused on copyright issues, except to fight for, artists against the AI companies, because the grand theft that's happening now is extreme, and the copyright reform that we originally were fighting for were against big copyright holders that were going after, people pirating stuff, and not the artists. And we had so many artists a part of the pirate movement in Iceland, because I really feel it's important that we value and understand the importance of creativity in our day-to-day lives, and pay for it. Nothing is for free. We are just giving our soul to these fucking companies that are running our social lives today. So I say fuck you, Meta and Twitter, and fuck all these oligarchs. I'm just so sick of them. I don't ever want to hear Elon Musk again. I want to hear his voice. It makes me sick. But I really loathe Sam Altman as well. He's a horrible person. So I think the sort of like the focus that, if I would be trying to organize people to do something again, I would tell them that it's important to carry on the fight for digital rights, for human rights in the digital space, and to reclaim our commons. We are nothing without one another, and to create a community, part of the community, and to get out in the real world and meet people and organize with people. And right now you are already in a totalitarian state, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And so you might have to put focus on different things than, in coalitions and stuff like that with all kinds of people, in order to, be able to resist what's already coming your way and figure out what are the most important things to do. And then I really think, I've been talking about this for more than a decade, about kind of a Project 25, where people look at policies, and just draw up exactly how they want to see their future together. Where is our future vision? That's not about taking away rights, but giving rights, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I think it would be a fun thing to do, with other creative groups. It's also a fun thing to do to create there's a lot of free online platforms for civic engagement, where, you can get people engaged and talking about what they feel is important to change in their near sort of like community. Obviously Iceland is extremely small with very few people living in it. We are around 400,000, so we would fit in the suburb of some of your cities. But it also means that we're a good testing zone. And I think a lot of the things, if you want women, get a woman to lead in your party. There are too few women in the U.S. Pirate Party, and if you want more diversity in people, because if you're only guys, a certain age and certain color, then you are not going to appeal to the broader spectrum of voters. So I would really start to work on, one of the things that I felt I could really light up Americans with was the talk about liquid democracy, which I find to be extremely interesting experimentation of transferring votes based on trust on different issues, and so forth, and sortitions and all that kind of stuff. Just try to figure out what is it that people feel that binds people in your community together, because federally you are many nations. There is nothing all American. You're just so different. I mean, come on. So, just focus on I think you can, if you can inspire people in your community to, follow along with your policy. You can take. Sorry?
Is there a Q&A?
Yes, there is. Yeah. I'm just going to wrap it up now. So if you can also, one of the things we try to do when we were beginning, when there was like a more unity among the different pirate parties around the world, it's all broken now. I mean, the German pirates are just full on Nazi party right now. So, but we would share resources and stuff like that and know-how. So if you need anything, any help with anything, I'm more than happy to help. So just focus on 3 things. Simple, you don't have to have it very complex, just ask people what they feel is important. So that's it. Thank you very much. I am open for a Q&A now.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to start it out with this first of all. Sorry, not trying to hijack it, anything, but welcome.
Who are you,
Mitch?
Who are you?
Welcome to Mitch. Thank you, Mitch. You're finally here. You joined. You're here. Please take a few seconds to tell us about your endeavors, my friend. Please tell us.
Me? Well, hello, everyone. My name is Mitch DeVillo of the Chicagoland 9, the Illinois Pirate Party. I'm a friend of the show. I am the contributor through the Spyglass series on the US Pirate Party website. And I am a candidate this year for captain. And I'm happy to be here. Beautiful San Francisco.
Can we focus on the Q&A portion for?
Yeah, Ty, do we have a question for Brigitte?
I just needed to recognize Mitch. He came.
And introduce yourself then too, please.
Yes, Ty Clifford, Vice Captain, West Virginia Observer. The Q&A I have for you, how do you say your name? Brigitte?
No, it's Birgitta.
Brigitte.
We've all been saying
Birgitta.
We've all been saying it wrong. I apologize.
It's okay, I'm used to it.
Okay.
It's okay. Right. Just say it anyway. It's comfortable.
Okay. All right. So you're saying that the way that you went about going about your way of implementing women in your initiative, right? How could you say that to us? Like, how do we get more women involved? Because it's not that we're trying to target any particular group, right? But it's
but you should.
You're right. You are absolutely correct. Whereas more women do need to be involved. So how could you say to us that more women need to be involved with the Pirate Party?
Okay, so when I was preparing for elections, for both my political moments, I went and tried to recruit people, that I had seen that shared a similar vision or had been very active in the civic meetings or protests, or was a good writer on, on blogs or whatever way back then. So I just went and tried to recruit people that I felt it would be fun to work with. It was harder back then to get women to run. It was easier with the Pirate Party because they had a role model in me, because I'd been in Parliament for 4 years, so I could get more women. So you just have to, find some, go and recruit people. That's, just have meetings in the real world also. Then you find people that you jive with, that you feel that could be fun and productive to work with. It's my only advice I can give.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, that's what I was looking for. That's my only question.
Mitch,
Are you
go
in
ahead.
West Virginia? Did you say you were in West Virginia?
Yeah, West Virginia. Yep, not Virginia. A lot of people get that confused. They
No,
think,
I lived in West
West
Virginia for a few months.
oh, okay, good. Yeah.
Up in the mountain, close to Charleston. So.
Charleston. Okay, that's a little bit southern from me. That's a little bit
Yeah.
southern, but yeah, now you see why.
Now I see. So yeah, I lived in many different weird places. I also lived in Louisville, but that was also just for a few months. And I used to sell vacuum cleaners door to door. Only in
That's
America.
Mitch, I think you had a question for our guest.
I did. So first of all, thank you for joining us, and I apologize for coming in late. But I did have a question about your experience with the Icelandic Party. I have always been, one of the things I always promote when it comes to the Pirate Party movement is the more local you get, the more localized your Pirate Party gets. Where a California pirate and an Icelandic pirate are going to be pirates by label, but they're not going to be promoting the same things exactly. Or a Massachusetts pirate and a West Virginia pirate may be pirates, but you're going to get more specific issues the more local you get to your party. So what I ask is, when it comes to Iceland, being a smaller population, being a smaller country, do you find that there were things you were able to do that the U.S. Pirate Party may not be able to do at a nationwide scale? And is there anything you would suggest to fix that problem if we may come across it?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And so I think there are like certain fundamental, like there was this thing called the Pirate Code made, which was sort of like the fundamentals on how you approach things, how you approach things in regard to policies and decision making and so forth. And for example, I managed to get a mandate to try to form a government, because like we have lots of parties in Iceland. It's not just two things like in the States. And so I managed to get a mandate to try to form a government. And so while I was negotiating with the other people that I wanted to form a government with, I was on Slack with the rest of the parliamentary group. So if there were any questions or anything I wasn't sure about, I would immediately ask them. So, we would have and if there would be anything that would be deviating from what we had promised before the election, we would have to vote it with our grassroots. So it doesn't matter what the policy is, if you have certain processes that are very clear on how you engage with the people that you're working with, so that you have trust, I think it's extremely important. Now, when it comes to sort of like policies, of course, we have some pirates still in the, in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, that have been there for a few years. I don't know, maybe 10 years. So they are running on stuff that have very little to do with, for example, what I created the Pirate Party to do, if you know what I mean. So, and because they are part of the majority, then they have to adapt in a different way than if you are not a part of the majority. I mean, the problem is that if you, one of the things I would always tell my friends that were shaping policies was that it's a total waste of time. Just go and look at the best policies that you identify with from the other parties and just say that you support that, and then you create a policy and the stuff that makes you special, if you know what I mean. So what would make you stand out? If you're going to run, what will make you stand out? What is your speciality? What are you really good and passionate talking about? That's the stuff you run on. That's the stuff that you put a lot of energy and effort into. Otherwise, you'll just, copy paste from others, because nobody ever does policy 100% once they get in. It's just a placeholder, so to speak. But the fundamentals are always extremely important. So it's important to have very clear fundamentals that are, if you are a pirate party movement, then you stick to the codex that we created about how you approach things.
Oh, I gotta stop the thing. We lost contact with the. Oh, there it is.
Oh, there they are. Okay,
It's back. Sorry.
they're back.
Back.
All right.
All right. Did that answer your question, or?
I believe so. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
If I may, I did have one more follow-up question for you.
Mhm.
So with the United States Pirate Party, one of the policies that we hold that isn't necessarily present throughout every other pirate party in the world is Pan-Americanism, where we say the United States needs to practice being a good neighbor and actually developing a proper good neighbor policy.
Right.
With Iceland, while you guys aren't physically in Europe, I do believe you guys would consider yourselves a more European-aligned nation, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right saying that? Or
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But still, the irony is that through Iceland, there is a rift. And one rift is sliding towards the continent of the United States or the Americas, and the other is towards Europe. So when we had the US base here, there was much more American influence, so to speak. Thankfully, they left, and we are now more European. We're very much like the European Canadians, in Montreal. But we are part of the European Economic Zone. We're part of the EES and Schengen with a free sort of travel of people. Most people that I know wouldn't travel to the United States right now. But, so yeah. So I think we're just hoping that Trump doesn't see us. We're very close to Greenland. We used to be a colony of fucking Denmark. But I still think Denmark would be better than Trump for Greenland. So, yeah, I mean, obviously every country is going to be special with their special things. So, but at the core of it, there are the same sort of fundamentals running, about the stuff that really made the Pirate Party special in Iceland was dealing with corruption. You have plenty of that in the United States. And then, transparency, accountability, and, strengthening the possibility, like legalizing WikiLeaks, strengthening the possibilities of journalists to be like real fifth pillars of having access, not to be afraid to have access to sources and whistleblowers and so forth. So that kind of stuff, and just, strong Freedom of Information Act and things like that. We are, of course, in a totally different world than when I ran the Pirate Party first in 2012. So I'm sure that there is, unfortunately, the international Pirate Party thing is just collapsed. It's just not functioning anymore. But there, and then the network and the support that it used to entail is gone. So I think that the Greek Pirate Party is still okay. But, other than that, it's pretty messed up. So, but I know, I think, I don't know if you've read the Pirate Party Codex or the code. So I think that's the only thing that, as long as you are working from those values, it doesn't really matter what policies you're focusing on. And the most important thing is to go and ask people, what is the most important thing that you feel that are not addressed? And then specialize on this angle of democracy in the digital era, to understand that if we don't have basic rights in the digital space, we don't have rights anywhere, kind of thing. And if finally, the fucking charlatans from Silicon Valley are being exposed for being exactly what the fuck they are. And so, I'm really glad about that. I mean, I used to work, I was an archive fellow working at the EFF. And I was shocked when I found out that they had accepted money from Palantir for their awards. And I called them out for it. I was extremely upset about it. Like, how can it be EFF and accept money from Palantir? They are like the evilest of all the evil. So anyway.
All right, Ty, can you make it quick? I think we're going to need to reset the stream here pretty soon.
Go ahead and reset the stream.
Okay, I'm going to do that right now. So
yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's for our non-commercial break. Ty,
well, good luck with everything. And like I said, I'm in communications with Darren, so if you have anything, you can always use him as a teleportation device.
That quantum teleportation now, it's only a matter of time before they scale it up, I think.
So Darren, I'm going to give you 5 minutes before we switch over to our AI panel, which, Birgitta, if you would like to stay and participate with us on that, feel free.
Okay, so hi, my name is Darren McKeeman. I am with the California Pirate Party here. And I live here in San Francisco in the North Beach neighborhood, which I love this neighborhood a lot. And I would prefer to get involved in politics here locally as a district supervisor or some other elected official. Unfortunately, all of those elections are, quite frankly, too far away. I feel the need to get involved sometime soon, and the next election is going to be in 2026, which is next year. There are very few actual positions being in the district that I'm here in San Francisco. There's very few things that I could actually run for that would make very much of a meaningful statement on the local level. But in the meantime, there is exactly one person that I completely disagree with that is up for re-election next year, and that is Nancy Pelosi. So I am going to announce now that I am officially investigating a run for Nancy Pelosi's seat, and I am trying to figure out exactly how to do that. But it's not going to be easy. And just the exploratory committee that I'm forming in the next week or so is the first step in doing that here in California. It's going to be very complicated. She has very deep pockets because of all the stock tips that she has accepted. And that's one of the things that I'm running on. I think that should be illegal. I don't think that United States senators should or Congress people should be able to hold stocks or do things like that, except trade on information that they have in their everyday jobs. So that corruption, I am vehemently opposed to it. It's one of the things that has driven me to actually say things like I'm going to run for Nancy Pelosi's seat. If anybody that you talk to in San Francisco, they will say that I have no hope, but the Democratic Convention or the Democratic Party is bringing in their own carpetbagger to challenge Nancy Pelosi in their Democratic primary now. And I don't agree with that either, because this is a person that moved here 6 months ago that is going to run for Nancy Pelosi's seat. Democrats and Republicans in San Francisco have the same tactic. They don't believe anybody who actually lives here can run because they think that we're all a bunch of left-wing freaks. Well, maybe that's true, but this one is running for Nancy Pelosi's seat, and I'm going to say thank you all for listening to me, and I hope that we can get something rolling with this. So, Drew.
All right. Well, thank you, Darren, and look forward to seeing you get things going with that. This come be in the next year. About a year, because a year from now you'll be in the thick of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So the next thing that I have scheduled for us is I have our Pirate AI panel, and so we had discussed having a discussion, and we all know that AI is sort of taking over here, not just in tech, but in places like doing the gatekeeping when it comes to job applications and things. That's one of the places where it's really bad right now in the U.S. anyway. So the other thing too that we see is that I think that we as pirates should probably talk about is the issues around copyright and intellectual property. Who owns what AI creates? What happens when models are trained on copyrighted material without consent? Is that fair use? That's a question. Should the federal government or the state governments regulate AI, and how should they regulate AI? So that's kind of the starting point for us here. My first real question is, who should be responsible when an AI system causes actual harm to someone? Go ahead, Ty.
Thank you for the question. I have very big concerns on this about who should be held responsible. And it's not just with harm, right? It's not just like an AI causes harm or you let it do harm, right? It's a matter of who is responsible for programming this machine and overseeing it. And that's where I lay my basis, is the machine can't be held responsible. It's the person. It's the person. So if I say to you, hey, Drew, I have a machine that can automate the firing of your it can do this disciplinary action amongst your employees, right? And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. And then we let it happen, right? But then it fires, I don't know, let's just say for argument's sake, 2 employees, but they didn't really need to be fired, right? And you look over why it fired them, and it's totally incorrect. You are still responsible for that because you did not foresee that. I'm sorry, not sorry. If people are going to employ these machines to do their bidding, they're still responsible for every outcome of that machine, no matter what. You can't sit there and say that, oh, well, the machine did it. That doesn't make any sense, man. I'm sorry. You're telling me the machine fired a dude who had 3 children, a family, and everything else. He's been here for 7 years. Like,
so what you're saying, Ty, is AI is a tool, and we shouldn't blame the tool. We should blame the person who is wielding the tool or is directing the tool.
Absolutely. I think there are very slim circumstances where you could place it solely on the machine, but I don't think that's very often. I think it's more times than not one person who is directing that machine.
All right, Birgitta, then Blaze.
Well, let's just be have one thing in mind, that, for example, like OpenAI, or in particular OpenAI, have been developing the chatbots in such a way and selling them like they are, like a safe product to use, for example, for counseling, where it's turned out that it actually drives people deep into psychosis or into suicide and so forth. So who is to blame for that? Surely it is not the fault of the person that buys a car without brakes. It's the OpenAI responsible for that. So I think it has a lot of nuances. I don't have time to participate any longer, but I just want to recommend, if you want to get a better understanding about how OpenAI, which is the most influential of the different tools, has been developed, and the thoughts behind it. There's a really good book called The Empire of OpenAI that just came out. There's a bunch of interviews with the author, for example, Won't Save Us, and so forth. So it's important to understand how these models are created, and in order to understand where accountability lies. And another point is extremely important. The amount of energy and water is astronomical. So all the wins that we've had with renewable energies are being stripped away, and they are just casually throwing out that we're just going to have nuclear plants everywhere. So yeah, let's rebuild the 103 Mile Island. Oh, but they are. So just think about that it's and it's inflation bubble. This is all going to burst, and it's like asbestos. It's going to be very difficult to get rid of it from our systems. Really nice. I really wish I could have stayed longer, but I'm dealing with long COVID, so I don't have a lot of energy. So my energy is finished today. So
we appreciate you joining us. Thank you for everything, and hopefully we'll have you back as a guest sometime soon. Yeah, I'd love to sit in on one of your discussions again. So. All right. Thank you very much. You have a good live, everyone. Bye-bye. Thank you. Yeah, and good luck, Darren, in beating Madame Pelosi. All right. Blaze, you are next.
Okay. I just want to respond to Ty, what he said about blaming the person for making AI, which I agree with. But at the same time, we can't exactly absolve the machine of any sort of responsibility. At some point, we have to put some responsibility on the machine for its actions, even if it's inherently directed by the person. It's like one of those things of like, I was just saying the AI is just following orders. It's not exactly an option, Mm-hmm. But that's just my opinion.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Well, no. Listen. AI does exactly what you tell it to. Period.
Well, I think it has to do with. So when you ask it more complicated questions or ask it more complicated to do complicated tasks, it's going to depend on how it was trained, right?
Right.
So the end user is not necessarily 100% directly responsible, because it all has to do with how it was trained, and the training has to do with who created it.
That's correct. However, if you let that go forward, who is responsible?
Well, I think it's going to be a little bit of both.
I'm sorry to split hairs here, but if you see that you fed this machine these questions and these prompts, and then it made a bad decision, and you're like, oh, well, maybe it's correct, but you still feel it's wrong, that's still on you.
Ty, perfectly understand that. We're not saying that the main person who created the AI isn't the main person responsible. We're merely saying that whether or not AI should hold some level of responsibility. You're
No,
pretty much saying that
sorry, I
that
can't.
AI is like completely void of responsibility, which is not fair.
I can't agree to a machine having responsibility because you're never going to. It's just never going to happen.
Why?
Sorry, because it's the person programming it. It's always the person programming it.
So so if you give an AI that's controlling a humanoid robot the ability to be lethal on the battlefield, who's responsible for each kill?
That is the person who put that in there and authorized that.
But what if it made a mistake? Because it does make mistakes.
It does make mistakes, and you're absolutely correct, and we should evaluate that. But it should be held down to that person.
All right, I'm going to go to Dustin because he's been waiting a while.
Yeah, so I would say I feel like these kinds of things probably need more context than just saying AI in general.
Yeah, we're talking hypothetically, and it's not right.
So first, I would say it matters in regards to the specific model you're talking about, because there are different levels of advancement in terms of AI, and some are much lower level tools like facial recognition, which is very straightforward. Some are like pure language models, which, it's just based on the training, but it's basically gradient descent. So
it can't grow legs and walk if you don't teach it how to grow legs and walk.
Right. You're building in different things, but when you get to a level where you're making multimodal models and you're integrating many different modalities, the number of possibilities of things that it's going to do are going to grow much, much larger. And the scope of what you can reasonably test is going to become too large, I would say, to reasonably try and analyze everything. At some point, you do probably have to treat it like it is its own agent, basically. And for that sort of standard, if we get there at some point, we'd probably need to have a different kind of test to evaluate the safety of that. And I would say it would need to be very rigorous.
I don't think there needs to be a safety test. I think there needs to just be a human there all the time going, "Hey, this is what it is."
So Dustin, when you're talking about the more advanced stuff, you're talking something that's getting closer to AGI?
Well, I would distinguish between very advanced multimodal AI and genuine AGI, because AGI, at least in my terminology, would be specifically artificial or multimodal artificial intelligence that can create and incorporate new modalities into itself. So it could learn how to add new arms onto itself and then use them and program into its brain how to use them, for example. That would be what I would call AGI. Whereas just a very advanced multimodal AI could just be, you put together something that's supposed to perfectly emulate a human. It has cognition similar to a human, but it's written via programming. And it's almost definitely not a human, but it acts all the way as a human can. It has all of the senses a human does. It reacts like a human does. You can't tell the difference, and you can't easily prove that it's not human.
Discrepancy is, Dustin, is a lot of people don't understand the discrepancy between artificial intelligent mixed reality and generative. They don't understand generative. Generative is that progressive part of artificial intelligence that I don't think a lot of people are understanding, unfortunately. That's where it is.
All right, I'm gonna go to Mars to let them.
Wait. And I'm not trying to hijack it, but Mitch has his hand up 3 times.
Technically, Darren did put his hand up first. I have raised my hand a few times, but if
Sorry, guys. Go ahead, you guys. What do you got to add here?
I give Darren the floor.
Okay. Well, I've got a little bit of a unique perspective on this because I actually have started an AI company here now. I'm building a company to use AI to help ships and vessels keep in maritime compliance with the Coast Guard. Uh, so I've gotten in the past few weeks, I've gotten very deep into how AI works and how all these LLMs and different types of neural networks work. I've partnered with a company that actually has been making military grade AI. They actually are saying that it's AGI. I personally don't see it myself, but we'll see. But it's notable because one of the stipulations that I had with them is that we actually had to be able to run the AI ingestion processes on our own machines, and it could not live in the cloud like most of these things. I think a lot of the problems in the AI industry right now come from large companies like Bergetta said, OpenAI, people like that, actually using the absolutely reality warping sums of money that they've raised to go out and warp the reality of our legislative processes. Fighting that sort of influence on our government in AI is something I think the Pirate Party should be doing because they're trying to make it to where nobody has any copyright anymore. They're trying to make it to where they can do anything that they want as far as copyright goes, and nobody else has anything to say about it. They think that our copyrights are basically worthless. And that is completely anathema, I think, to Pirate Party thinking. We should have, we definitely shouldn't have like 90-year, copyrights, after the author's death, but also we shouldn't have no copyrights. We shouldn't have, no rights to anything that we've written. Because that's basically what Sam Altman and OpenAI are arguing, that all the stuff that we put on the internet is basically worthless, and we know it's not. So that's the one thing I'm very aware of how AI, hoovers up data. We are using our own private data. I think that AI should only be trained on data that your company owns or public data. Because what we're doing right now is with our clients, we are nice view, Drew. What we're doing right now is we're training all of our data on publicly available data, which is Coast Guard regulations, Coast Guard and American Bureau of Shipping regulations, and that's all we're training our AI on. We find that when we train it on a limited set of data, it's a lot less prone to hallucinations. And I think that's where people like OpenAI are getting a lot of problems because they're just hoovering up anything on the internet, and everybody knows you shouldn't believe everything on the internet. So that's that's kind of like my whole perspective on the whole thing right now. You should only use data that you own or is publicly available.
All right, I'm going to go to Mars, and then we'll come back to Mitch.
So I was going to comment on the conversation about accountability.
Sure, go ahead.
So I guess from a programmer's point of view, at a certain point, a lot of times the machine will start going and doing actions on its own when it comes to going through databases. Of course, the programmer does put in the initial things for it to do and search for, but at a certain point, it does end up going off and finding things on its own. And that is really the danger of AI, is the fact that it will go find things on its own to add to its database, to learn more. I mean, because the whole point is it is artificial intelligence.
So how does that then relate to how do we start making some of these models? Like,
No.
How do we enforce that? How do we enforce accountability if the AI does get to a point where it is doing things on its own that it was never told to do?
You don't enforce it. There are already tags for it. When the machine starts doing things like that, it's already tagged that this.
Personally, in my opinion, I just think that it's bad all the way around. But that's just from an artist's perspective. I don't like having my shit stolen, and that is, yeah, that's really my biggest qualm about it.
I think that's a legitimate gripe about AI is, you
It's
know,
already tagged. It's already tagged. The machine, it's already tagged. All that's already tagged.
Yeah.
I would argue that a lot of this stuff is actually the result of companies and people at those companies being unethical. Because, like I said, if the AI respected robots.txt, our website, then a lot of stuff would not happen. But it doesn't seem written to ignore that sort of thing. And as a result, Cloudflare just came out with an AI blocking system that just does nothing but generate AI gibberish when it detects an AI browser bot.
So that's actually another good question. Like, is creating things that actually poison models? Is that something? How do we feel about that?
I have a very strong answer to that.
All other war. That's what I think.
I have a huge stance on that.
It's I mean, really, if they're going to be unethical about that, then we're going to be unethical about responding to it. And
Personally, I think that if you have your program and then it starts, kind of going off the rails, then the, way of handling it should be shut down the system.
Mm-hmm.
Turn it off. Get rid of it. Until that program and code is fixed, it should be shut down.
I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Dustin, go ahead, and then I need to get back to Mitch.
Oh, I actually meant to hit the clap thing, not the raise.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, then, Mitch, I'm gonna let you go, and then we'll let Ty say what he wants to say.
All right. So, 1979, IBM made a statement that I think holds well here, which is a computer can never be, therefore a computer must never make a management decision, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. I think AI is a tool. I think it can be used and has been used to better the lives of people, whether it be sailors or whether it be, it could really be anybody. Now, the comparison I have to bring up, and it's a comparison I've made before, is like auto-tune 15, 16 years ago. When artists were using auto-tune, a lot of people were like, you're not even a real singer, you can't sing, this is robot noise, this isn't real music. And to an extent, they may have been right, because if you're a fan of traditional vocals, yeah, you're not a fan of auto-tune. Until people realized, after auto-tune got a big push and was overused, people realized, actually, this is kind of like an instrument. This could be the making your voice auto-tuned might actually benefit the song depending on what the song is, as opposed to trying to make someone that can't sing sound good, which typically never worked with auto-tune. And then you look back to the introduction of electric guitars, many people called it plastic music and said, well, it has nothing to do with acoustic. When Google came out, they said, why don't you read a book? When AI comes out, they said, why don't you just Google it? The passage of time is going to continue, and we're going to continue to get tools that make our lives easier. I think being afraid of AI and the consequences of AI is only natural. But I think to turn around and say, yeah, well, it's just bad and there's no good use out of it, I think that's cutting off the nose to spite the face. I think there's a lot of good use for AI. I think that we have to hold accountable the people that are trying to take shortcuts using AI. I think that's ultimately what is going to be the biggest issue at hand. When you have people making management decisions using AI, that right there is too far. A computer cannot be held responsible. And this is when Ty's point comes in. You have to hold the person who develops the AI responsible for what they're making the AI do. Now, AI obviously can develop a life of its own, no matter how many times Elon has tried to make Grok put whatever he wants it to say. Many times Grok will just be like, yeah, well, I was programmed to say this, but that's not true. I've seen it multiple times on Twitter. I'm going to dead name Twitter. But I can't help but think that AI right now, it is scary. And that's because I don't know if I want to call it a late stage capitalist society, but definitely a society where capitalism seems to be taking greater control over our day-to-day lives, and privatization seems to be a big factor. Anytime you can cut corners and save money and make money, they're trying to take it. And that's what we have to combat, not the AI itself, but the people who are misusing it.
So I think what a lot of us are saying here right now is that the role of AI right now is not, as far as decision making goes, it should not be autonomous, that it needs to be supervised, and it should not have any final decisions when it comes to things like hiring, firing, or even my extreme example, which is probably not even all that far off, of autonomous drones or robots on the battlefield. So, yeah. So, anyways,
That's
Wanda,
not far off. That currently exists. And
right?
being used.
Yeah. I mean, they just haven't been deployed yet. I don't think the drones
No,
have, but
they
not
have
the
been, right?
the drones have been, but the robot, the
robot
android,
dogs have been deployed as well.
right?
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, Wanda, and then I'll come back to Blaze.
I just realized I was muted. What I was going to say is I completely agree with how you ended off there, Mitch. But I also think something that can't be ignored is the current environmental impact of AI, like how much water it's consuming. And, I feel like that's something that also needs to be mitigated as much as possible when it comes to AI, is its environmental impact.
Well, I think that's also something that Birgitta touched on before she left. Yeah, talking about firing up 3 Mile Island again, that was been shut down for a few years. That's only 50 miles from me, so that's hitting close to home. That's good and bad. I see. I think I'm generally pretty positive towards nuclear power. I think if we can modernize nuclear power, that's the best way for us to move forward in our energy needs.
I'm not really talking about nuclear power per se.
No, I know,
here,
but you're
though.
talking about. I mean, it's all about resource. It's all about using resources, though. I mean, because it's using a significant amount of water that's being used, a significant amount of power, and so yeah, it's a huge increase in using those things. Blaze, did you still have something to say?
No.
Okay. All right. Ty, I'm coming back to you.
In terms of accountability for the AI machines, thank you, Mitch, for understanding where I'm coming from. It's not like, yeah, you programmed this machine to go out there and do bad, right? Like it just kind of just like went off the riff, right? But somewhere along the way, you still had a monitor on that machine, and you could have been like, hey, don't do that. Stop that. Let's redirect it back. And I feel like if people can understand how to use AI secretarially, okay, as a secretary, not as a boss or a manager, but as a secretary, a person to themselves, right? Like if there's something you need to do throughout the week, and you can manage this machine to help you do that throughout the week, or a business can help them do that throughout the week, then sure. But I don't think it should be making military decisions. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's going to be used for military purposes, and it already is. It already is. I mean, how do you think, Israel and Palestine is fighting. Okay, it's already being used. Period. Okay, but when you let a machine go too far, I think at a certain point, the person who programmed it to say, "Hey, oh no, it's never going to do this," and then it does that, you should be held responsible for that. I'm sorry, I can't. It's very difficult to go over case by case, sure, because we don't really have many cases to do that, right? But we do have a sense of morality where we can go, that's not right. That should never happen. That's all. Sorry. Go on.
All right. Well, I think we're coming to the end of our time. We're getting very close to our scheduled lunch break. So does anybody have any last words on this? So I've got like 2 minutes. Dustin, go ahead.
Okay, I'd just say also the people I would hold first accountable for that are the people in charge of the businesses, funding the businesses, and deciding the policies for those businesses, because by and large, they're setting the test criteria for those models.
Absolutely. You see where I'm going with this. Absolutely.
Right. But I guess don't stop at the programmer level, because that's usually not where decisions are made.
No.
All right,
you
please.
Got to whole policy.
I'm just going to say this. I just find it, I completely agree with Ty and Dustin about all this. It's just more of a warning, I guess. Like, if we're expect AI to get to like the level of like not Terminator, but somewhere a little bit below before it gets to that point, if we expect it to get that high, or like iRobot or something like that, if we expect that at some point in the future, I just think it's a little silly to think that it should not have any sort of agency, because it just reminds me of the same sort of conversation people had about individual soldiers under Nazi Germany. It just reminds me of that. I'm not saying Ty or Dustin is wrong. I am just saying this conversation reminds me of that specifically.
That's like the movie WALL-E.
I mean, like, can you elaborate a little bit?
What do you mean?
The just following orders thing. I'm guessing. I think that's what where you're going with it.
Yeah. Could you elaborate a little bit? Like talk. Like I want to know more.
No, it's just a general idea of the concept of like I have all this fear of AI all of a sudden becoming Terminator and going off the rails and like that. So if, like, say Terminator happens, who do we hold responsible? The machines who went off the rails, or some guy who made the machines who no longer is probably dead or something like that? I don't know.
For not saving us.
All right, Wanda, and then we got to wrap it up.
I just wanted to ask for clarification on what you said, Ty. So you're saying like the ultimate owner of the machine bears responsibility, not necessarily the programmers. Is that correct?
Yes and no. Darren, I see your hand. What I'm saying is, okay, I built this machine, right? And then I go, okay, let's set this machine off. I said however many contracts or whatever it is that this machine's going to be used, et cetera, et cetera. But I know the potential of this machine, right? And then this machine, they enact this machine, and then it goes off and does some stupid shit, right? And at a certain point, I have to bear responsibility for that, because I knew that it was possible for that machine to do that. That's wrong.
So I think where we're going with this is that AI, when it gets some autonomy, is like a child, where the parents do bear some responsibility over the child's actions.
It's a chat. Exactly. That's the perfect way to put it, Drew. It's a chat.
But I guess my ultimate question is, what happens when it eventually goes from a child, so to speak, to an adult?
Well, yeah, that's the next question is then, like Mars said earlier, like, you know, when we detect that things are going off the rails, we need to.
I don't think we can let it do that.
I mean, when things happen, like things, you know, there are things that are not fully understood with what's going on with some of these AI models. So what I would say is that yes, human beings need to try to train them in a moral and ethical way so that they behave in a moral and ethical way. And then if they don't, they need to be shut down. So that, I mean, I'm also a big fan of saying please and thank you when I use AI, just because, you know, if they do become Terminators, I want them to know that I always was nice and so. All right, you guys in San Francisco, go ahead, and then we really got a break for lunch.
Okay, I'm just going to say one thing, and I know this very personally from my own company. We are piloting our system on some super yachts, and it is going to be advising them on Coast Guard regulations. And if our AI gets that wrong, somebody on that super yacht is going to be liable for fines or jail. That's just the way the Coast Guard works. So you better believe that we are going to be responsible for that AI, especially when the owner of that super yacht says, oh, somebody got jailed, we're going to sue you over that. So I think that this is all a short-term problem. I think the longer-term problem that Blaze was talking about if it becomes sentient, whatever, I'm not sure that'll ever actually happen. And I've got my own reasons for believing that. But I think what you're talking about here is a short-term problem. It'll get shaken out with lawsuits.
All right. Well, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Everybody out there, we will be back. I will be starting up a new stream. This is part 1. We will be back in about an hour, actually a few minutes less than an hour, 3:30 on the East Coast and 12:30 on the West Coast. So join us back when we come back, and everybody have a nice lunch. And